Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the podcast. It's another cold and snowy day here in Denver, which is another day of me snuggling up in my cozy fleece and cozy Waldorf ski hat. So the video of this recording is going to look very real. This is me IRL. Even when my house is perfectly warm and heated, don't worry, everybody. I'm just a very cold-blooded human, and I used to think it was because I had bad circulation, but then about 15 years ago, I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and I learned that one of the symptoms of hypothyroidism is coldness in your extremities. So if you can never function in the world without socks on, like me, um, if your hands and feet are always cold, you might have hypothyroidism. That's a little public service announcement for everybody today, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Today, we are going to be talking about gratitude because at the time that this podcast episode will be released, it's the day before Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving, everybody, if you are in America and celebrate Thanksgiving. Um, and one of the things that comes up this time of year is gratitude, not just because it's Thanksgiving. I don't know about you guys, but in our family, we have a tradition when we sit down to Thanksgiving dinner that we go around the table and talk about what we're grateful for. Usually our gathering is so big that I don't make everybody wait until we've all spoken before we eat because, oh my gosh, we would never eat and everything would be cold by the time we got there. But we just, while we're eating, we go around the table and say something that we're grateful for. So that's, one really concrete way that gratitude comes up. But also, um, starts the holiday season, right? If you haven't already started shopping for the holidays, if you celebrate whatever holiday you celebrate, Hanukkah, Christmas, Yule. I have a friend who they just celebrate the Yule or solstice or whatever. Um, there usually is gift giving as part of that celebration, and it can be a real buzzkill to watch our kids receive presents and just like furiously toss them aside and rip into the next one or never say thank you or whatever. And that is something that I hear a lot from parents about this time of year. How can I get my kids to be grateful? They're so entitled, blah, blah, blah. My confession for you is that, when I grew up, we were expected to write thank you notes for all of the presents we received for our birthday or for Christmas or for Hanukkah or whatever, because I'll go into that in a minute. I guess I need to cover that. I have so many friends who are like, "You're Jewish, right?" So hang on a second, I'll get there. But we were expected to write thank you notes. Unless it was someone who lived in the same house with as us, we had to write thank you notes. And when I first had kids, I started, being like, okay, I've got to make them write thank you notes too. And my confession for you is that I really let that slip by, like, I think kid number three. I was just like, yep, you need to say thank you to people. You can say thank you to them in person. You can say thank you to them in a note if you want to. You can write a text to them. We use Marco Polo in my family. So you can send a video recording that says thank you. One year I had the kids write the letters, but my parents they didn't live anywhere that you could send mail to. So I had them write letters and I took pictures of the letters and then emailed the pictures to my parents. So anyway, gratitude is important. Thank you notes are optional. That's my confession to you. That's how I've chosen to parent. And it was a big letting myself off the hook, but it was also a colossal disappointment to the older people in my family. And, I'll just add that to the list of disappointments that they feel toward me. Anywho, let's talk about gratitude because I think there's a lot of stories we tell ourselves about gratitude. I think there's a lot of interpretation that goes on when we see our kids maybe not displaying gratitude, all of these things. Um, so let's talk about cultivating actual true gratitude, not just in our kids, but in ourselves. So when I first started exploring this topic, it was years and years ago, and it was like right at the like height, I think, of the gratitude journal. And if you guys are my age, you either probably tried having a gratitude journal at some point, or maybe you keep a gratitude journal right now, or you went through a chapter where everyone in your book club was talking about their gratitude journal. Gratitude journaling was like a really big thing. And for some people, doing a gratitude journal is huge. It completely changes their mood. It completely changes what's going on internally for them in a really positive way. And it is a beautiful practice. So if you use a gratitude journal and it is just like, giving you all of the warm, cozy feelings, that's amazing. Please don't stop doing that. And I'm so happy for you. And I see a lot of people using the gratitude as more of like a list of things you should feel grateful for, or even more, a list of reasons why you shouldn't be unhappy or you shouldn't feel dissatisfied in your life, or whatever feelings of like yearning or desire or sadness or hurt feelings, any feelings you have that are negative, you really aren't entitled to those feelings because look at all these great blessings that you have. And if that's what gratitude journaling feels like to you, or even if it's not a gratitude journal, if it's some sort of way that you have of thinking about yourself where you're just kind of like trying to guilt yourself into happiness, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. And I think that's an interesting conversation to have, just in the sense of like, what is gratitude even? And what are we even trying to do here with ourselves and with our kids when it comes to gratitude? So, um, I think also that gratitude journal, if we're using it as a sort of like, beat ourselves up tool, it's really perpetuating this kind of distorted view of gratitude that I think we learned when we were even kids. Like, all of those times when my parents were like forcing me to write a thank you note, or cajoling me about saying thank you, what do you say, all of that stuff, right? Or were you one of those people that grew up in a family where it's like, people are starving in Africa, or how good, like these guilt stories about how good we had it compared to other people's. Like, how much actual gratitude did you feel in those moments, like when your parents were like kind of finger wagging and scolding you? I don't know about you, but I either felt extreme annoyance toward my parents, or I would feel really guilty or ashamed that I wasn't more grateful and I wasn't more happy and things like that. I mean, to me, the gratitude journal for some people becomes basically just this like new way of having that same finger wagging, scolding parental voice in our heads, look at what you should be grateful for, appreciate your blessings, blah, blah, blah. But is that really true gratitude? Like, obviously not. So let's talk about what actual gratitude looks like and how we instill that in ourselves and our kids. So there's kind of three main things that I talk to my clients about when we're talking about gratitude. The first thing is kind of the difference. If you know me, you know that I love some alliteration. So one of the things that I like to talk about is fostering gratitude versus forcing gratitude. Fostering versus forcing. You really can't force anyone to feel anything, including yourself. So disallowing certain emotions or telling yourself or your kid you should feel XYZ, it's an exercise in futility, right? So instead, we can foster gratitude in ourselves. We can foster gratitude in our children by both learning the outward behaviors of gratitude, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but also learning that inner process of a lived experience of gratitude. So having a conversation with your kiddo where it's like, what did you think when you opened your presents this morning after like Christmas breakfast or something like that? Like, or if you specifically saw, you know, your kid be light up about a certain present, oh my gosh, you got that Lego set from grandma. What was that like? Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to use it. Like, what do you think about grandma getting that for you? Wow, that was like really nice of her, or that was super generous of her. Like having a conversation where you actually, your child is naturally feeling a feeling of positivity and happiness in certain moments of their life, helping them name that, helping them connect that with somebody else's generosity, helping them realize and have language around their emotions, that is a very different conversation than grandma got that for you and you didn't even say thank you. I know you were so happy to see that. I could tell that you were so happy to receive that thing. Doesn't it feel amazing to receive these beautiful, like generous gifts from people? Like, I know how I felt this morning. You see what I'm saying here? You start to see how having this like attitude of gratitude. Oh my gosh. I said that by accident, you guys. I did not mean to rhyme just now. An attitude of gratitude is something that is a little bit contagious. We know kids learn best from modeling and experiences, right? Modeling something that's true and real. And you can also model the fact that, like, there are other emotions that come from receiving. There's feelings of obligation sometimes. There's feelings of letdown. Maybe you built it up in your head that you're going to get this, that, and the other thing for Christmas, and then you didn't. Or I have clients every year who talk about how sad and let down they feel after Christmas morning when they gave everything to everybody and nobody thought of them. Or, there's a lot of emotions that come into receiving and gift giving and all of these things. And being able to identify that and talk about that, it's kind of a big deal. And it's very, very different than the way we were raised. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to gratitude is separating morality from behavior. And what I mean by that, saying please, saying thank you, these are manners, they're behaviors. They're not actually emotions or even values. They're super important, and because they're behaviors, this is where our actual discipline can come in. And this is probably what we already were taught when we were kids. And I would posit that we were taught that in not great parenting ways, which is why they came along with all these other irritating feelings that we had towards the person, like scolding us into saying thank you or writing that thank you note. But that the manners piece of gratitude, we probably all were taught. Whether we were taught it healthily or not is a separate conversation. And so we can teach these behaviors to our children using great parenting tools, right? All the parenting tools you hear me talk about on the podcast, having boundaries, having consequences, enforcing those boundaries, doing so with love, creating this container inside of which your kid gets to decide, am I going to be grateful? Am I going to express gratitude? Am I going to write the thank you note? Am I going to say thank you to, you know, this person? How am I going to do that? That is something that we can teach our kids by establishing rules and enforcing them healthily, by modeling, right? Once again, kids learn through experiences and modeling. So when we set boundaries and we enforce those boundaries, we're engineering an experience for them. And when we model those manners and those behaviors, we also are teaching them that please and thank you is just a normal thing. Like, do you say please to your child? Do you say thank you to your child? Many parents don't. Um, but if you notice to yourself, like, am I exhibiting generosity? Am I exhibiting, these good manners? That's a piece of the puzzle too, right? But when we start to think that our kids not saying thank you or not saying please or not being generous and sharing means something really unpleasant about our children, when we think that they sort of like reflect a lack of morals or a lack of values in our kids, it's really, really hard to enforce those boundaries well, because now we are upset. And when we're upset, we're not neutral with our kids. We overreact. We might beat ourselves up. Like, what's the matter with me that I haven't been able, I must have fallen short of the mark if my kid doesn't say thank you or whatever. And once you're in that mental place, it's really, really hard to parent well. So really separate the story you're telling yourself about what's going on inside your kids from their specific behaviors, and recognize that manners are really important. Gratitude is an emotion, it's not a behavior. And so there's two real things that we're trying to teach our children and help them navigate. And they require two kind of different sets of parenting skills. The manners, the behavior, that's all discipline stuff. The emotion, the understanding of that internal process of gratitude, that has nothing to do with behavior or discipline or punishing or consequences or boundaries. It has to do with connection and communication and helping our kids to explore their inner world. And that brings me to my third piece of this gratitude puzzle, which is curiosity. Get curious, because if when your kid isn't feeling gratitude or showing gratitude, what's going on? We don't necessarily know, but a lot of times we jump to the conclusion that it's because they're super entitled. Um, well, that may or may not be true. I mean, ask yourself for yourself, like when you aren't showing gratitude or when you're not feeling that gratitude attitude, is it because you're entitled? Or it's because you're just simply in this emotional state where you're just not feeling happy, or maybe something else is on your mind, or something's not satisfying to you. You know, when we explore with curiosity and have those like emotionally connected conversations with our kids and trust that your child isn't a monster, you are going to get much closer to feeling close connection, positive emotions, and even gratitude inside of you and for your child to feel. Um, and that also might mean that sometimes when you're not feeling it, we give space and permission for like, yeah, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. That doesn't mean we don't use have good manners, but you certainly don't have to feel grateful if you don't. The way you feel is the way you feel. So I really, really hope that this like season is filled with true connection, real feel positive feelings, gratitude among them, and all of those things. I want to express my gratitude to you as listeners. Like without this podcast, I think there are a lot of families that I wouldn't be helping right now. And spreading the word about this podcast has also been a really big deal for my business, but more importantly, it's been a big deal for parents who need support and want to know that they're not alone and enjoy, learning and growing, in this community. So thank you so much for being who you are, for caring so much about doing right by your kid, for never giving up on learning how to be better and better and better. And don't forget, there's more where that came from. I'm not just giving you generously this podcast every week. There's so much more that is awaiting you if you choose to take advantage of it. You can always meet with me and share your story and get my eyes on your family anytime by setting up a free discovery call with me. You can be on my email list and get emails every week that have parenting tips and tricks and all those things. And of course, you can be one of my clients. We can be working together, not just in one meeting, and not just in this one sided way that we're working together already in the podcast, but literally in a steady, ongoing dialogue relationship that levels up your family and gets you closer to where you want to be as a parent and as a person. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I will talk to you again next week. Bye.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.